Good evening, and welcome to another Trinity lecture. These members of the Summer Beit Midrash representative of our leadership. I will say this is one that I really look forward to. I think I mentioned to some of you that for several years after I first had the privilege of hearing Rabbi Nachman Levine, I kept looking desperately for excuses to bring him in so I could learn from him again, and I failed. And last year I finally said, I don't need excuses. This is just awesome Torah, I should bring him in. And I did, and it was an amazing experience. And I'm looking forward to it again tremendously this year. In the Jewish tradition of only saying partial praise of someone in front of him. So I'll just say very briefly, aside from being a highly engaging teacher, as all of you in his classes know. To me, learning from him is the closest experience I have in many ways to learning from someone whose mind, it seems to me, to think along the same tracks as Chazal did, which is, I think, an awesome thing. Also, it's been a great pleasure to build a personal friendship, having found the lack of excuse to bring him in. So this is one of those things I look forward to with great anticipation. Already looking at the Makoret and seeing that there are a couple of things I've wondered about for years that I'm hoping I will finally at least be able to advance my thought about where I've been stuck. And without further ado, Rabbi Nachman Levine.
Good evening. Welcome. This is clearly the time and the place to thank Rabbi Clapper for giving me the opportunity to come to a nice community, especially spend time with the awesome incredible Carol. So it was a thrill and privilege to learn together with the Kola, and I just wanted to thank the awesome incredible Kola for being such an awesome incredible Kola. It was great. When we spoke to Rabbi Clapper, so kind of dovetailed with things that the Kola is doing in terms of groups of people that are included, excluded. So he said, why don't you do this story? And picked one of the most difficult and troubling stories in the entire Shas. Oh, okay. So what I decided to do was, why do I have to have one troubling story? Why don't I take 3 troubling stories and discover they're troubling because they're supposed to be troubling. They're not going to be made untroubling. What can we learn from them? So took 3 stories, let's kind of go through them. And reading closely, and I decided to call it Inside Outside, the Rabbi Rebuked. In 3 different stories, the Rabbi gets rebuked. In other words, they have to do with groups where they're inside, outside, they're excluded, they're included, there is exclusionary things, inclusionary things. At the same time, the basic form of the story is things on the outside don't always appear to be what they are on the inside. And at least one story, the story itself, what it appears on the outside is not what it is on the inside. Okay? Doesn't make it less troubling, but it makes it very interesting. So, what I did was, I have some of the translation sheets, and have the original text. And the reason for that is because sometimes the jokes only work in Hebrew and Aramaic. Okay? So, in other words, when you have word jokes or sound reversals, it's good, it's good to see it the original. Why do we find, for instance, in Tanakh and in Midrash, you have the idea of sound reversal? 2 major reasons. Number one, because it's cool. Okay? And the other one is because sometimes in themselves they communicate reversal switches about faces that can be useful. So, try to have a close reading of a Midrash and try to use some of the different ways that can be used. What if there are many interpretations? Okay. What if they're contradictory? Even better. Okay. What if could we at least look at the form, and the form could be the content? All right. In a couple of the cases, I divided them into lines. It is said of Yonah Frankel, who revolutionized the field of Midrash, if the only thing that he did, that he accomplished, was simply when he produced the Midrashim in his books, as he divided them line by line, that would have been a revolution. Because you see how things begin, how they end, how they reverse from the beginning to the end, how the things play themselves out. So you go line by line, then you start to notice parallels. Structure is going to be important. Wordplay is going to be important. Inside jokes is going to be important. A lot of things are going to be important. Okay, So we take one troubling story. I have two different versions of it. Story number one, there is the printed version that's in the printed Rabbi Midrash on the shelf. There is a more critical edition, and there's, I wouldn't privilege one over the other because there are many, many more manuscripts that we found now that it's kind of interesting we work together. So, story number one. Drush on the pasuk V'sham derech, and over there's a derech. Simtiv. Okay, let's read that as sim derech. Let us assess, evaluate our way. Is our way the right way? Is the way that we think it is that really what it is? Right? It might look like something on the outside, it might be something different. It starts off with the derech. The second line, it ends off with the idea of derech eretz at the end, which means that the derech in the beginning, that's very good, it's a nice derech, but it's missing one component. It's not derech eretz. Okay, so you can see that right from the symmetry. So, Maaseh Rabbi Yanai. There's a story with Rabbi Yanai. There's a Tana. Shohay Mahalach B'derech. He was going on the road. He was on the outside. Paga Adam Echad. He bumped into a person, Shem Shupa B'yosa. He was really chashuv looking. He was quite impressive. Looked like a major Talmud Chacham. Amlo Mashkach Rebbe Li Kapla Gavan. Says, would Rebbe like to be accepted, have you over for dinner by us in our environment? Whatever you like, yeah, fine. What does he call him, by the way? He calls him the title, Rebbe. Right? Would you, what do you want? He's gone out onto the street. Have to be in the environment out in the street. Come in my house, in the house of Yanai. He brought him into his house. Now he's inside the house. And this is an environment where especially with such a hush of a person, it's going to fly. Sparks are going to fly. It's going to go from Chumash to Mishnah to Talmud to the sky's the limit. But Kobe Mikra v'lo matzah. He checked him out in Wittentorp. He didn't have the goods. But Kobe Mishnah v'lo matzah. Checks in Mishnah. That's not his major. But Talmud v'lo matzah. He doesn't have it. But Haggadah v'lo matzah. What about Negadatza? No. Okay, Amar lo Brich, would you like to please lead the benching? And you know why he's all of a sudden decides it's time to bench? Because it's over. Have a nice day, Would you like to lead the benching? Okay, you can handle that, right? So he says to him, he said very politely, Yivarech Yanai b'veiteh. Yanai should bless in his own house, in his house. That's very, very, very polite. It's sweet. What does he mean?
You can't do it.
You can't do it. Okay. Is that it appears to be that he's being very polite. Bottom line is you can't even handle that, huh? Okay. By the way, what did Rabbi Yanai call him? Rebbe. What does he call Yanai? Yanai. He's so clueless. He's so outside the circle of certain codes that he doesn't even know. You don't call Yanai, Yanai. Okay, especially when he calls you Rebbe. Right? He is not part of the inner circle. Okay? He appeared to be. Then, so he says, okay. Itbach is there within you. He says, Yanai should bench within his own house. He says, Itbach, you have it within you, that if I would say it for you, you would repeat after me. He said, yes. Just like the beginning of the story in the Vilna edition, he said, would you like to come into my house? He said, yes. And now he says, would you like to be chucked out? Yes. Okay. So he says, okay, fine. So he's going to do it on the level of children. He's going to read to him, okay, and he's going to repeat it. He says, okay, so repeat after me. Morle, achal, kalba, pasta, diyanai. Okay, a dog has eaten the bread or the pasta of Yanai. Kamtsare, he got up and he grabbed him, although the version on the other column is kam tafse, grabbed him. Now the copyist, by the way, was not dyslexic, okay? It's a gorgeous reversal, okay? A dog has eaten the bread of Yanai, so kam tafse, he grabbed him, okay? Now we're getting physical. We've gone to a whole different area. The question is now, how is the conversation going to go? And we're going to be getting metaphysical. Grabs him. And it's kind of a startling turn of events. I mean, it's really cool because when they make up later, you have a line on the other side. Man, okay? Man ipisim din l'dei, okay? When they made up with each other. So there's going to be a resolution of it. The sound reversal is neat. So he grabs him and he says, what is, remember, by you? Okay, you wanted me to buy you? Why is my inheritance by you that you're preventing from me? This is already interesting. Now we're speaking very, very interesting. This is fascinating. And we've gone from by you to, you want to eat by me? You want to be by, okay? So the section of who is by who, even though they're in the same physical space, has now shifted. Conversation shifted greatly. So he says, it's fascinating. What is your inheritance that's by me? I have your inheritance? He says, yeah. Once upon a time, I was walking down the street, outside, the derech, out at the outside world, and it was passing by the cheder, passed by the Beit Sefer. So I'm on the outside, they're on the inside. I'm not part of that elitist group. I heard the voices of the little kinderlach, okay, like children. Amrin, they were telling, they were reading this pasuk, Torah tzivo lanu Moshe marashaki let Yaakov. Moshe taught us the Torah, it is inheritance to the congregation of Yaakov. It says, he's on the outside. Marashaki let Yanai ain't it? Doesn't say in the pasuk, okay, the inheritance of the congregation of Yanai, because that's a very elitist group. Okay? It says, Kilat Yaakov. It's the congregation of Yaakov. That's all of us. So, I made a drasha. I'm standing outside. I'm not someone in the Beit Midrash. Now he's making a drasha, okay, which says, the Torah is not the inheritance of a elitist group of Yanai's Kehillah, okay? It is open to everybody. And even though they're on the inside, and I'm on the outside, and they're not even aware the fact that they're empowering me from the inside to the outside, but once I had that, I was able to make a nice drasha, and I was able to learn things from that, so that's my Yerusha, that's my inheritance, so why is it by you? So at this point he's very, very fascinated, okay? So as he gently lets him down, and he says, Midit fasim din l'dei, once they now were resolved with each other, Malo lama zachita lemechal torah. Why were you zocha? Why did you merit to eat at my table? In other words, he's made a mistake 2 times. He's not going to do it a 3rd time. Mistake number 1 is he saw someone that looked very, very chashuv looking, and that must mean that whatever he looks like on the outside is what he looks like in the inside. Well, it turns out what he looked like on the outside was not like what he looked like in the inside. All right? His second mistake was, well, since he is clearly very, very ignorant on the outside, okay, he's very uncouth and boorish, okay, so he must be like that on the inside, so he makes that mistake again. Not going to make that mistake again, all right? I see that there's something very, very good in you that would even would reflect something that's very, very, very noble and beautiful on the outside. How were you zeicha that you could eat on my table and you got into my space, which I see that you rightfully belong there? So he says, why? Okay, in all of my life, lo shamait mila b'isha, I never heard a bad word said. V'chazarti lamari, and gave it back to its owner, the one that gave it. V'lo chamit, I did not see train. Can't say I didn't see 2 people fighting, argumentatively. V'lo yahavit shlama b'neiho, and that I did not bring peace between the 2 of them. Okay. Marlo kol hadat derech eretz. Talk about derech. Talk about the derech eretz you have. Wow. I called you kalba and I called you a dog. Oh my God. He said, these are 2 things I did. How do we know he's telling the truth, by the way? That really that's the 2 things that he always did. Maybe he made it up. Maybe it's not what it appears to be. All right, what are the 2 things? I never heard a bad word against me that I gave it right back.
Called him a dog. He didn't say-
What?
You called him a dog, he didn't say anything.
Exactly, he just did it. He says, I never had a situation where there was a fight between two people and he didn't resolve it. Well, he just did it. Okay, it replicates itself. Okay? He said, I see that's the case, and I see why you merited it usually at my table. Right? And he says, I called you a dog? I mean, that is, that he says, I was wrong. By the way, when I called you Rebbe in the first place, maybe I had it right in the first place. In other words, the student now is Rabbi Yanai, and he's willing to accept that. He's rebuked. And he says that you're my Rebbe in Derech Eretz, and what goes out on the street, okay, may have something to teach me on the inside within my world. Okay? So, in that sense, there's the symmetry of the Derech without the Derech Eretz. Now we have what to learn from the outside world. What appears on the outside may be very, very different than what's on the inside. You can't tell just by looking at it. Okay. There's a very, very similar story. And part of what's important to keep in mind is why is he so upset? He calls them these names because the idea of something misrepresenting themselves on the outside as opposed to what they are on the inside is unacceptable to him. The idea of something not being tochok baro, that the inside reflecting something that's on the outside is to him is unforgivable. And then he realized that he's fallen for that 2 times in a row, he's not going to fall for it. And he realizes there's something really, really fine in him that's on the inside, that inside his house, inside the space of Kihilat Yanai, there's plenty of room for Kihilat Yaakov, and he's willing to extend the inside to the outside. And what's kind of neat is how it plays against another story that's got a lot of common elements, but it's different. All right, stories like this. Story number 2. Rebbe, Yehuda Nasi, who was both Torah and Dulav and Makom, he was wealthy, he was the center of Torah. Patach otzorot b'shnei batzoret. He opened up the storehouses in the years, the years of drought, right? Drought has been going on, there's been famine, and he opens up the storehouses. Amar, he said, Yikansu ba'alei mikra, everybody can come in. Who's everybody? People who learn Chumash, ba'alei Mishnah, people who learn Mishnah, ba'alei Gemara, ba'alei Halakha, ba'alei Haggadah. Aval, amei ha'aretz al yikansu. Okay, that class of people, they can't come in. All right? Now, on the level of sound reversal, it's kind of neat. Because otzrot, treasure houses, sounds like batzoret. You got the tzadi and the resh. Of course, the reversal of that would be amei ha'aretz, which is the opposite of that. Not letting them in. All right? It's his, it's his, balameo baladeo. It's his property. And he is going to take care of the Talmid Chachamim. There's a limited amount of resources, and he's going to give it to the Talmid Chachamim. So he says, Amei ha'aretz al yikansu. Dachak Rabbi Yonatan ben Amram v'nichnas. Rabbi Yonatan ben Amram pushed his way in. He went in. Amar lo, Rebbe, parnaseini. He says, Rebbe, support me, feed me. And it's not as if, Rebbe, he has his approach. It's not as that he's he's over there serving everybody himself. Whoever comes in, he gives them the food. There is a rational hierarchy of how things should be done and how they shouldn't be done. So he says, okay, so he gives them the bechina, gives them the fahar. Okay, B'ni, Karita, did you read Torah Shebechtav? Did you read the written Torah? Amar lo, lav. No, all right, not too good on that one. Shanita, did you learn Mishnah? Did you learn Torah Shebal Peh? Nope, lav. It's like the other test. So he says, I've got a problem. In Ken, all right? You didn't learn Mishnah, you didn't learn Gemara, you didn't learn Halach. Okay, the Ma'afan Nesecha, how could I support you? So he said to him, Rabbi Yonatan ben Amram says, Parnaseni kikelev u'ka'orev. Support me like someone would support a dog, okay? A raven. Clearly he's alluding to the pasuk in Tehillim, Noten levei malach. Okay, Hashem in His mercy gives bread, its bread to the animals. Me'orev ki yikranu. He gives it even to the children of the ravens when they call out. Rashi over there says that that he gives to the dogs because they don't always get so much food easily, and the raven is very, very cruel, doesn't give food to its children, but the Kodesh Baruch Hu is above that. He's very merciful when he gives to them. So he says, do it on that level. And he appeals to his mercy. Parnaseh. That he got through to him. The level of mercy, okay. That challenge you can't handle already. Right? And by the way, in terms of these two classes, being like a Kelev is a very high madrega. If you look on the bottom source, Rabbi Kiva said, "K'shayiti Am Haaretz." Before I became learned, I was an Am Haaretz. I was ignorant. Amarti, mi tein lehel mechach. Whoever would give me a Talmud Chacham for breakfast, when Ashchenu kachamor, I would bite him like a donkey. So the student said to him, "Rebbe, you should say like a dog." He says, "No, that's a high madrega." He says, a dog bites, okay, but it doesn't break, the bones. He says, when a donkey bites, okay, bites and it breaks the bone. So a dog will be on a very high madrega. Okay, he says, Amar, that I was much more hostile. Okay, he got through to his mercies. How did he do on the Bechina? How did he do on the test? He didn't do good on the test. He went out. Now he fed him. Okay, Rebbe himself fed him. Ativ Rebbe sat down to come and stare. He was upset. Oy li shenatati pitila am haaretz. Woe to me that I gave my bread to an am haaretz. It's not only that there's only limited resources, so limited resources, you have to give it to Talmei Chachamim first. His personal pain, this goes against my logical hierarchy. Okay, why did my heart overwhelm me? Okay, logically there's a hierarchy, there's an order to things, and I felt for the emotional, I felt for the emotional side. All right, Amar lefanav Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe. So Rabbi Shimon, his son, said to Rebbe, Shema, maybe, maybe, Yonatan ben Amram Talmid Chacham, maybe this ignorant person that came in was actually your student Yonatan ben Amram. You never know. Who never ever in his life wanted to benefit from the Torah, okay? Get benefit from the Torah, just get an easy write-off just because he was involved. But Kol Vashkach, they checked into it to see if that's who it was. Amar Rebbe, Yikansu Hakol. Changes one word. Remember the last decree, okay? Al Yikansu, okay, just kidding. Yikansu Hakol. Everybody could enter. What happened? So what happened was, in the process, while he was giving the Bechina, while he was giving the test to Yonatan ben Amram was giving the test to him step by step. Every time he said, "Do you have it? You have the good?" Oh, he keeps testing, okay, his approach. Then he realizes there is a value to what he's doing. There's a value within Torah. He does not want to benefit from the Torah. That would be very crass. Okay? And what about mercy? This is a story right beneath that one about the Yisurim, the sufferings of Rebbe. They came because of a story that happened, and they went away because of the story. Because of a story, what was the story that came? The whole Eglah, there was this calf. The Kamtu L'Shrita is being taken away to be shechted. Zaltali L'Resha B'Kanfei, the Rebbe, went and put his head right next to the kapot of Rebbe, the kabach, and he was crying. Amalei Zil L'Kach Nutzartam. He says, in the hierarchy of things, that's what you were created for. So logically, okay, what do you come to? And you can't come to hide by me. That is the order of things. That's the hierarchy. That's the nature of things. That is the logical order. So they said in Shemayim, Ha'oil v'lo kamerachem leitu alei Yisrael. Since he didn't have mercy, so suffering should come upon him. They did. Okay, how did it go away? Alidei maaseh halcho. It went away. Yom echad she was sweeping up, and there was these little baby weasels. She was sweeping out the door. He said, leave them alone. And he quotes a pasuk. Right? So we can contextualize this within Torah. Okay, it says Hashem's mercies are on all of his creations. Now they said, that's different. Since he had mercy, we're going to have mercy upon him, and his suffering went away. Okay, yeah.
I think it's possible that the previous story with Rebbe is connected to Rabbi Gamliel, who's his great whatever an ancestor of some sort who also doesn't let people into the Beit Midrash and test them on Tochel Kiboro, whether inside's like they're outside, which in some way.
So if you would turn the page, the answer is possibly yes. I didn't know if I was going to get into it, but for sure I'm going to get into it. Okay. In terms of his quoting of a pasuk, in other words, Rabbi did not do so good on the test himself, okay, and it's presented to him as a Torah value, and the idea that he went with the hierarchy, not necessarily the logical thing, but mercy that Kadosh Baruch has that beyond any other hierarchy is something that should be incorporated within a pasuk. He says, change my mind. He says, I'm not going to fail that test again. Everybody should enter, all right? Things on the outside are not as they appear to be, and even things that you think on the outside are the right way, maybe on the inside they're not the right way. So he reverses himself on that. And he's able to contextualize it within a pasuk. Right? Now it says everybody, so in other words, it's not just that he felt that he had fallen for it, he realizes, I learned the lesson, it was very gently given to him by Yonatan Bamram, that we're not going to do things that way, and it was very gently suggested to him by his son, that possibly there's a different value over here that you may have not seen is beneath the surface that you should go. Yeah?
Does this mean that Rebbe's becoming egalitarian, or does it mean he doesn't want people to benefit from the Torah that they learn?
No, he says in other words, he says, I was thinking why there's a logical hierarchy. Okay? Is that entirely moral? I see from what he's saying, it's not moral to benefit from the Torah, that someone should have it's not even a question of exclusionary, which logically he would stand by. He says there is a corrupted value, there's a not good thing if you take advantage of the Torah, and I see not taking advantage of the Torah would let everyone in equal. He says even within the Torah. Okay, and his natural mercies, which is what he naturally has, okay, says I'm going to let that overpower the system. That's as far as I would be willing to say. Now,
I find it interesting that his son, it's his son that suggested,
yeah,
so that Tochel Kiboro piece is changing throughout the generations, you know?
So in other words, with Rabbi Gamliel,
Right, no,
all right,
but his son gets it, you know?
yeah, he gets. He also might know who's actually in the inner circle, who was that masked man, anyways. But you know, he knows who it was. But yeah, there's this idea of the children. So. I don't know if I was going to get into this, but more bracha. So this is one thing I once noticed was the very famous story where they decided to elect Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that they would make him the Nasi. He was Chacham, he was Ashir, he was the tenth, he had Yichus, he had it all. So they said, would you like to be the new Rosh Hashiva? So he says, good question, let me go check with my wife. He has to go check with the board, okay? He goes and asks his wife, Amalei, Dilma v'Amalcha, what if they fire you? I mean, they just fired Rabbi Gamliel, maybe they can fire you. He says, I can handle that. Okay, l'shtamish in yom echad bekasa demoka, let a person use a crystal glass for one day, and l'macha l'tov will get broken the next day. But meanwhile, I got it for one day. I don't care. All right. She says, you do not have a long white beard. Rosh Hashivas tend to have long white beards. You don't have it. Hu yoma bar tamni sar shaneava. That day he was 18 years old. Yitrachesh le, so didn't have a long white beard. Yitrachesh le nisa, it was a miracle that happened. V'hadulu tamne sare. There were 18 rows of white that grew on him. Now he had 18 rows of a white beard. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that is what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, where the Mishnah clearly quotes from the next house Haggadah, I am like a person of 70, but I'm not a person of 70, I'm like a person of 70. Okay? Makes a simple cheshbon. So 70, okay, 70 minus Ben 52, yeah, that'll work. Okay. So, what happened? Now he has a long white beard. Now he can play the part. So, Oto Yom Salko, the Shomer Petach, they got rid of the person that is guarding the outside entrance to the Beit Midrash. Okay, everybody could come in. So there's not the storehouses this time, it's the Beit Midrash. Everybody could come in the Beit Midrash. Well, who's excluded? Who's excluded? Rabbi Gamliel Machrizah used to announce, any student that is outside is not like his inside. There's a contradiction between the outside and the inside, okay, which was so reprehensible. Lo yikanes lebeit midrash, should not come to the Beit Midrash. So we had a guard outside. How he knew what was going on inside Beit people, I don't know, but he was a guard. in that day, many rows of safsalim, of benches started to be added to this bench. Rabbi Yochanan, there's a machloikis, pliga bar Rav Abed bar Yosef ben Dustay Rabbanan. Chad amar yitasvu arba meiv safsalei. One opinion says it was 400 rows of benches. Now 400 is always very often is a code word in Midrashim and in the Talmud for a lot. Things are like 400, okay? Chad amar sheva meiv, and he once said 700, which I have no idea what that means. Okay, so it's machlokes, it was 400, 700. So now the Beit Midrash is packed up, everybody could enter. But Kachal Shedater, the Galil was very upset with himself. Amar, Dilma Chas v'Shalom, maybe, heaven forbid, Manati Torah, maybe I prevented Torah from being learned. Maybe I wasn't right. Maybe when I kept people excluded, I should have included them. Asule b'chalmi, so they showed him in a dream, Chatz v'chiyurim d'malin chitna, they showed him white barrels filled with ash. Okay, and he understood what that meant, because he's hundreds and hundreds of rows, okay, of these barrels that all that you have inside them is ash. He knows what that means. Okay, reassured. Really, what's in them is no good. Below here, and by the way, it's not true. So they showed him that so that feels so terrible. But it was not a reflection of reality. Okay? And what I thought was interesting about that was, what happened to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah when he had to look the part? So what was added to him? Okay, white. Okay? Dare chayurta. Okay, rows. Okay, of white strands of beard. Okay, now dare in Aramaic means rows. Okay, you have a famous story with Moshe Rabbeinu when he went up to the Beit Midrash on high. Okay, so they put him at the end of the seventh dare. Okay, at the end of the rows. Right. So now we've got rows of Talmidim, and they appear to be Chatz v'chiyure, right? White barrels. Well, why would that be? Because they're just like their Rebbe. He looks like one thing on the inside, but on the outside, okay, he puts up this appearance. He's got a long white beard, and who knows that even reflects what's on the inside. So they're his Talmidim. So they're just like him, what they are on the outside. It's not like they are on the inside. They're just as white on the outside like he's on the inside, okay? But it's not true. Okay? It's false. Why? Because by Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, what was on the outside really reflected what was on the inside and manifested itself. But for him to make Rebbe Gamliel happy, he went with this approach. You have to be Tochel Kabbalah, so that made him feel better. By the time Rebbe came along, everybo's allowed in, not just even Ami Haaretz. Okay, so I think that the two stories, certainly stories number 1 and number 2, would to a large degree play off of each other, and it might even be good. All right. So then we get to the really troubling story. Okay? And if we look at it long enough, we look into different approaches. By the end, when we deal with it, it'll be even more troubling. Okay. And what I did in this case was not having two diversions. What I did was divide it into two different parts. Part 1 and part number 2, how do they line up? All right. And as you'll see on the chart, it has beginning, it has an end. The first line, person should always be, rach and kaneh, should always be soft and flexible like a reed, and it should not be hard, okay, strong, like a cedar. It ends off with him, okay, teaching, now implemented. Okay, Lolam ya adam rach kaneh, a person should always be soft, flexible like a reed, and it shouldn't be tough like a cedar. Okay, so the beginning is an end. If you'll notice, in the beginning of the story, he is leaving where? What? His Rebbe's house. He's leaving the Beit Midrash. He goes out in the outside world, and the last scene, he's going back into the Beit Midrash. And he's teaching something that he picked up in the process. All right? Now, I want to give this a context. There is certainly an approach that's being used a lot. Sometimes when you have a story or Gadata that's in the Gemara, particularly, you see how it's contextualized within the context within the sugya and halacha, or even the sugya that precedes it. To what degree does it play off? All right. So the previous sugya I'm going to throw out is things don't always appear to be as they actually are. Things are not what they appear to be. You don't always know what it is on the outside, what's going on the inside. So, what it does over there is, talks about reeds and cedars. And things aren't always what you think they are. Right? To what degree does the story itself replicate itself in not being what you think it is? My dechtiv, what does it say in Mishle? The little type over here, which is what precedes it. It's better to have the wounding of someone who loves you and likes you, okay, and a whole lot better than the kisses of someone who hates you. You're better off with the wounds of the person who hates you. In other words, it's not always what you think it is. It's better the curse that Achia Shiloni, the prophet, cursed Israel, more than bracha shebirchan Bilam, Harasha. Much better than the bracha that we got from Bilam. Alright? Because Achia liked us, Bilam didn't like us. Alright? Achia Shiloni kalalam b'kana. He cursed us with a reed. Alright? Amar lehem Yisrael v'hi kashem et Yisrael kasher yamnud hakaneh. Hashem's going to hit you. He will hit Israel, okay? And he's going to move you like the reed gets pushed out of place. Well, of course. Because throughout Tanakh, okay, reeds are always vulnerable and lowly and bad, okay? And cedars, okay, are always great and wonderful, okay? And what he's doing is he's taking the drasha and he's flipping the drasha, okay? Which he's been doing in a few cases. Now, it's a very positive thing, which is when you're doresh l'tovah, that's one of the things he's doing. But he's accomplished something else in the process. Okay? What's so good about a reed? It says, Makana Zeh, just this reed, object of the metaphor. Made by Makom Mayim, it's in a place of water. The Giza'o Machlif, and its roots keep replenishing themselves. The Shorashav Merubim has lots of roots. All the winds in the world can push it away, and it's flexible. Okay, it's flexible, but it's still there. Okay, so if he cursed us with a reed, that's good. All right. He blessed us. Okay, and then we're like cedars. Which Elam knows that throughout Tanakh, cedars are always great things. You have many, many places where the metaphor of a cedar is great. Bad. He said that they are, Matoba Alecha Yaakov Arazim, they are like cedars. Just like this Erez does not stand by the water, like the reeds do. Its roots do not replenish themselves. Doesn't have a lot of roots. Okay, it stands tall, high, and mighty, but if a wind comes down, okay, knocks it over, has a great big fall. Falls on its face. Okay, and not only that, the reed was zeicha, it merited that it could become a reed pen that you could write with the Sefer Torah, and the Levine and Ktuvim, you could write Torah with it. Try doing that with a cedar. Okay? That's the hakdama to the imagery. And you have to understand what he's doing is, we all know that throughout Tanakh, cedars are a metaphor for, are you going to depend on this wheat cedar, this wheat reed, and cedars are always good, and he comes along and flips it. Yeah?
Why is it Karazim Alimayim?
What's that?
How does the pasuk work with the drasha? It says Alimayim, it says
Oh, okay. So the answer is, I should not have taken out the parentheses which are in the Gemara, which is, the Gemara does not include the part. In other words, the text that has it in the Gemara has parentheses. That's not what the text should be. It's just Garazim. All right? And I'll show you something in imagery. Just you can imagine it. You'll see why it works. The actual text should be Garazim. All right? So that's very well taken. All right. Here comes the story. Okay. Let me tell you something about this story. This story is ugly. Okay. It's about the famous story of the ugly man. I mean, it was in Daf Yomi about a couple of weeks ago, and people have been walking up to me and saying, that story, it's like, what is it? Well, things are not as they appear to be. Number one, there's an ambiguity, deliberate ambiguity at the beginning of the story, and there's an ambiguity at the end of the story. I would say more than ambiguity, there's a multiple interpretation of what it could mean, and the people in the Beit Midrash understand it one way, and we, the omniscient readers who know everything, understand it means the opposite of what it appears to be, because we know everything. All right? So, it has been given a lot of attention because it's just real difficult. All right? So, again, with this idea of inside and outside, Here comes the rebuke. Ma'aseh, a word, okay, that's going to show up a lot. This event, a story that happened. Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Shimon. He came min Migdal Gedor, min Beit Rabbi. He left his Rebbe's house in Beit Midrash, and he's coming from the city of Migdal Gedor. Hayar achuv al chamor, and he was riding on his donkey, Mitayel Svat Nahar, and he was having a tiyul, he's having a spatzir, he's having a nice, beautiful pastoral trip on the edge of the river. And just try to imagine, if you will, that in the river, what's growing next to the river? Reeds. And on the beautiful other side, what do you have over there? Cedars. It's beautiful. The samach simcha gedolah. And he was happy, this great happiness. There's all these superlatives. And he was very, very feeling very, very thick. Like very, he's not feeling very, he's on his high horse. Okay? Because he learned Torah harbe. He learned much, much Torah. He's feeling great. He's coming from Migdal Gedor. Where's that? It's been identified possibly as a city that's near the Kinneret. So he's walking by the Kinneret. The Maral says, I'll tell you where Migdal Gedor is. What's a Migdal? Like ivory tower. Gedor. Okay, it's like a fence separating you from the outside and the inside. He's coming from a place called, the High Ivory Tower that's surrounded by a fence. Okay?
Wow.
What?
I said, wow.
Yeah, no, that's what he's saying about himself. Wow. Okay? And he is having a simcha, samach simcha gdolah. That appears in another place. You know where that's a quote from? Last time I heard that one, it was by Haman HaRasha. Okay? When he peeled poor, and he was so excited that it came out on the day that Moshe Rabbeinu died. And what he didn't know is that was the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was born, and that he is waiting for, forget about Hipil, he himself was going to have a great downfall. But at that point, he's on top of the world. Okay? And his world is just absolutely beautiful. It's pastoral. The outside of the world, beautiful, beautiful. The inside, I've got all this Torah inside me. All right? He's next to the water. The Torah is compared to water. All right? You all know what it means something is compared to. You can compare anything to anything. Okay? What does it say that something is nimshal to? It means it's in a pasuk. In the pasuk, in the surface meaning of the pasuk, it is a metaphor. In other words, when it says in Yeshayahu, you don't know the right way to act, you don't know where to get direction. If you're thirsty, go to water. What he means in plain English is he's not talking about water. Okay, the plain sense of the pasuk is he's using the metaphor of you don't know how to act, go to the water. So in other words, that becomes a mashal. Why is it mashal? So if we got to Daf Chaf, that means we already learned Daf Zayin. Okay, and Daf Zayin it says, why is the Torah compared in the pasuk to water? What's the common property? Same way that they go from a high place to a low place, the same way the Torah could only exist in someone who is lowly in how he faces the world. Okay. But he's looking at the outside world, he's looking at the inside world, and everything pastorally. Harmony between the outside world and the inside world. Gorgeous. He happened to bump into a person who was really, really ugly. Okay, I mean, he was ugly. This is an obscure literary reference, but he was hit with the ugly stick. Okay? He was ugly. Amalo, he said unto him, Shalom Alecha Rebbe, Lo Hitzir Lo. He didn't respond to it.
So who said?
What?
Who said to him?
Yes!
Right. It was
Perfect.
ambiguous. Who
Perfect.
said that?
Okay? Who said to who? Okay, Amalo, Reka. Empty vessel what you are. Kama mechuar otoish. How ugly is this person? Shema kol b'nei irecha mechorim kamotcha, which works out beautiful in Hebrew. It's ugly, but it's beautiful. Shema kol b'nei irecha mechorim kamotcha, where b'nei, I started the bold from the nun, right? The sound reverses. B'nei irecha, ayin yud resh chaf, chuf chaf ayin resh nun. Okay, it exactly flips it around. Okay, are all the people in your city ugly like you? Okay. Amarlo, any of there? I don't know. Don't know about that. Elalech. Okay. Now he's not a chacham because a chacham is supposed to answer on the first thing, and on the second thing, second. He says, but to your second question, I don't know. Va'elolech emor le'uman she'asani. Go speak to the craftsman that made me. Like, he doesn't say, no, I'm pretty. He says, I may be an empty vessel, okay? And even on the outside, if you want to say that I'm ugly, yeah, but go speak to the craftsman who made me and tell him, Kama mechuar kliza ashasita. Okay, how ugly is this vessel that you created? There have been a lot of approaches to this, but I think you're on the money right about who said to who. Okay, there is, by the way, an approach. There's many modern approaches, but there's an approach from Farish. He knew at Ruach HaKodesh that they were going to mention the pasuk tonight. Of Atem Tiyuli Skula Kol Amim Kili Kol Haaretz. So he knew in Baruch HaKodesh that the pasuk was going to come up, and he sees it as he's got this world view of a harmonious world view that everything is exactly perfect. He's got the Torah, and he goes out in the outside world and he confronts it. He notices that the world is ugly, and he generalizes. Is it okay? All you guys like that? Is that what the outside world is like, the world that's outside of Torah? Okay, and he's got it wrong. He's totally missing the point. You were made a treasure, okay, because the entire world belongs to me. And your job in Torah is to go out into the world and perceive that beauty and bring out that beauty. If you don't, then I don't know what it is that you're going out of. Question is, who said to who? In other words, there's a possibility that this guy really is ugly. Okay? Really? Okay? In other words, like this. One possibility is he takes one look at this ugly guy and he says, Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe. He doesn't respond to him. All he responds to him is Reika. The other possibility is that he's so flying high and he sees a person and he says, Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe. And what response does he get? Nothing. He takes one look at him and says, how ugly you are. Everybody in your town is so ugly? And there's a total misunderstanding over here. What does he mean, how ugly? He's not talking about how he looks on the inside. The way that you are on the outside, the way that you're acting is so ugly. And he confronts him about it. And the guy doesn't get it. Okay, he thinks he's talking about not the outside, he thinks he's talking about the inside. Okay, and he responds, okay, and he didn't understand that. And he responds with something that so far that he's very, very impressed with at this point. Okay, some of the interpretations, okay, not the one that I mentioned with the Karen Ora, who sees the whole thing very allegorically, which is not a contradiction that this literally could be true, is that as it turns out, by the time you get to the second column, maybe the guy really is ugly. Okay, wouldn't rule out that possibility. So he said, "Ein yodeh, don't know about that." Kevan she'yada ba'atzmo, this clearly is there's no ambiguity. Okay, he knew that he had sinned. Yarad min chamor, he got down off of his high horse, and that's not low enough. Nishtatech lefanav, he prostrates himself on the ground in front of him. V'amar lo neitei lecha, I'm responding to you. V'choli, forgive me. I was wrong. I know that I sinned. Okay? He's horrified with what happened, even if it was a misunderstanding. And he comes to a clarity of what this guy said. What the guy said, go to the craftsman who created me. Who's the craftsman who created me? Baruch Hu. So it's not just that you did something against me. What you did was a sin against God. Okay, deal with it. Go speak to him if you have any problems. Not only that, in terms of Kli Kol Haaretz, if your job is that you were sent out to bring the Torah to the world and to bring out the beauty in the world, maybe you don't like the world that God created. Okay? Come to think of it, okay, in the sense that the Midrash said that the Torah says, Ani ha'iti kli omnato shel Kodesh Baruch Hu. I, the Torah, was the kli umanut. I was the vessel with which I was the blueprint with which the world was created. Maybe you don't like the Torah either. Maybe you think the Torah's ugly. That's essentially what you just accomplished. So it's beyond theological. Your entire Torah now, okay, is placed in question in terms of the beauty and the function of it. All right? And he says, go speak to the craftsman that created me. Okay? And tell him how ugly, okay, is the outside and the inside of it. Okay? He's besides himself. So he says, please forgive me. At this point, things start to get ugly, perhaps. I am not going to forgive you Ad shetelech le'uman sha'asani, until you go to the craftsman who created me, which is kind of a impossible condition. Then what? You tell him. Kama mechuar klizer sha'asita. You go tell him how ugly is this vessel that you created. It's hanging tough. Okay? He is giving it right back to him. Okay? The second time, he begged him for forgiveness. Now, you go tell the craftsman that created me. Now, it might be that actually he is an ugly guy. Really not a nice person. It might be that there's a second lesson, there's a second insight, which is it's not that you did something only against me, it's also against Kadosh Baruch Hu. It puts Kadosh Baruch Hu's creation, whether it's the world or the Torah, that was the blueprint for it that you were supposed to implement. Okay? Go speak to the one who created that. Might be deep. Okay. Remember Eino Machzirlo, who didn't respond to him? What does Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon say to that? Nothing. Right? And it has been pointed out that if this is the same Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the famous story in the Gemara Shabbos, where he went into the cave, they were hiding out there for 12 plus a year, they came out, they were studying Torah, they had all this great Torah for a year. Then they come out and they see someone who's actually, should forgive me, he's actually working, and he's plowing, he's working the field, and they look at him, and every place they look, the kid's consumed with fire. They said, you're involved in the temporal when you could be involved in the Torah, and the creatures get burned up. And God said, what'd you do? You come out of the cave in order to destroy my world? Maybe you should go back in the cave. Learn a little bit more Torah, you'll be okay. All right? If this is the same Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, then that's the world. He was in this beautiful world. He comes out, and sometimes it's an ugly world out there. Well, too bad. Your job is to see the beauty in it and to bring out the beauty. This is the second column. All right? Again, it's kind of ambiguous on purpose, but it's the same ambiguity. He's walking after him until he gets to his city. I'm not sure who's walking after who. I suspect it's very much probable that Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon is walking after this guy. It's not such a tiyul anymore. It's not such a trip. He's simply walking behind him, saying nothing, walking after his Rebbe, okay? There's nothing that he can say. All right, we have the second column. Again, they bump into people, the people of the city. Remember the city? Everybody like you? They came out to greet him. Shalom aleichem Rebbe, Mori. Amar lahem, he said to them, the ugly guy said, what did Rabbi Shimon say? Rabbi Elazar said, nothing. Silence, right? Lo hechzir lo, which is like on the first column. Let me to calling Rebbe. Who are you calling Rebbe? Amru, the one who's walking behind you. Rebbe? If this is a Rebbe, al yarbu kimota. Remember bechorin kimotcha. Okay, there shouldn't be a whole lot of people like him in Israel. There should not be lots of them. Al yarbu obviously scrambles Rebbe, and certainly plays against the fact that he was lamad Torah harbe. If that's the Torah that he learned harbe, I don't know if there shouldn't be a lot of Rebbe's like that. And Rulo, so they don't argue with him, they don't confront him, they don't give him musar. Say, let's hear your side of the story. Amar lehem, kach v'kach asali. This is what he did to me, which has been insistently throughout. Remember, it started with maaseh. Okay? Remember, l'oman she'asani, kli zeh she'asita, she'asani, she'asita asa. This is what he did, this is what he did, this is what he did. Angry. Kach v'kach asali. What was Elazar saying? Silence, nothing. He's taking it all. What did he tell him? He told him what happened. What did he not tell him? There was another part of the story. He insulted him.
Apologize.
He apologized. He begged for forgiveness. Everybody didn't say. Who's embarrassing who now? Publicly. Okay? If the story had ended with him getting on the ground and begging, that would have been a beautiful story, okay? It flips now. The one who's active now is the ugly guy. Maybe he's acting very ugly. Okay? He doesn't tell the part about that he begged him for forgiveness. He's publicly embarrassing, not by the side of the river, okay, but in front of the entire city. We're not going to argue with you. Even so, we accept your story. Michalo, Shadam Gadol in Torah. He's a great person in Torah. You remember, he had a Simcha Gedolah, so he should be mochel. Oh, all right. Amar lehem bishvilchem ani mochel. For you, not that I want it, but because of you, I'm okay. So fine, I'll be mochel. U'mevad shlo yeh ragil la'asot kem. As long as he doesn't keep on doing stuff like that. which might mean I'm only doing it, okay, but he should never do it again. How do you know he won't? Okay, or he's saying that model of Torah is not the right model, and on that condition I'm willing to forgive him. So, not that he wants to forgive him, but okay, so either the possibility is he really is not the right, to a certain degree, but hasn't had it right. Okay, not on the outside, but on the inside. Or, it's entirely possible that there is a value here. Yes, I can forgive you. The people, with their confrontation to me, all they did was they didn't argue with me, they didn't confront me, they listened to my side of the story, and I told them, and I responded to them. So, okay. Miyad nichnas Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, he goes back into the Beit Midrash. Where was he originally? In the Beit Midrash. Right? When the story started. Okay? Now at the end of the story, he's back in the Beit Midrash. Presumably he has learned something in the outside world that he considered ugly, but now that he's willing to